2025 Indian Scout Bobber. Literally the most popular, the most sold Scout out of all of them. The most stripped down version, short fenders in the front, short fender in the rear, short travel suspension in the back, and that new 1250cc Speed Plus motor. And I think this thing is going to be a little beast. And before we hop on a ride today, I'm gonna actually tell you a couple things about this thing, because this little engine is amazing. It's not really that little. 1250cc's is pretty respectable, but this thing has 105 horsepower and that much torque. This new motor is, like I said, a little beast. Good torque in the middle, has a pretty decent rev limiter for a twin, almost 9,000 RPMs, exact number right here. Let me actually tell you guys how this thing feels as I ride through slow speed right now. Small and lightweight. I literally just got off of a Springfield, and comparatively speaking to that bike, this thing feels tiny. Even on this little bend right here. Small, nimble, flickable, lightweight, easy to get on the side of the tire. Oh man, but it doesn't necessarily feel small in terms of like distance. Obviously my arms, they're probably down about 15 degrees. They're not very far off, but my arms are straight. I'm 5'10". My legs are fairly comfortable on the pegs. I can reach the shifters very nicely. It feels ergonomically friendly. It's not massive, but it's not super duper tiny either, right? It's not like a Rebel 300 to where that motorcycle, you feel, it doesn't matter how big you are, you really feel like you're very large on the bike. It's decent for the size of the bike. This is the seating position on the Scout Bobber. 90 at the hips, a little bit forwards on the legs. Bars are a little bit lower down, fairly wide, but it's a nice, comfortable seating position. Taking it around the neighborhood for some slow speed stuff. The throttle input is very friendly. It doesn't seem to be like really snappy. Obviously, like I said, I just got off the Roadmaster, and that bike has a whole bunch of torque punch. So you give it a little bit of throttle and it kind of like has a little bit of jerk to it if you're not careful on the throttle. And this bike does not have that. It is much more smooth at the low end. Whoop, and much more easy to kind of put onto the side of the tire, simply due to the fact that it's a lot lighter of a bike. I mean, it's like 250 pounds lighter than that bike. But I will say that the Bobber, comparatively speaking to the other models of Scouts, this one's probably the slowest handling back and forth, because it has that big front tire. Part of the Bobber's appeal is that it is different from the other models, basically like this. This bike, being the Bobber, it has a shorter travel suspension than the rest of the motorcycles. But to be very clear, this bike, comparatively speaking to the other Scouts, is the most uncomfortable. It has the shortest travel, has the stiffest suspension. When you're out riding on smooth roads, it's not bad. It's perfectly comfortable. It has a little thicker, cushier tire, so it actually cushions the bumps from the tire instead of the actual suspension. But when you compare this to the Super Scout and the Sport Scout, it definitely is a lot less pleasurable to ride over bumpy roads. This is a sacrifice, but it's a part of the Bobber package. And since all of those things are different, it feels different when you actually handle it. Yes, is it fast back and forth? Yes, it's probably faster than the Springfield I just rode, but it is slightly slower than the other models back and forth because it has a little bit wider of a tire. So the width of the front tire has a lot to do with how much the bike can lean back and forth. So big wide front tires usually mean slower lean back and forth. But honestly, other than that, the bike is actually stops perfectly fine, has great suspension feel. The front end on this doesn't feel like it's lacking any. Through this neighborhood, I feel fairly comfortable, and the bike is really darty and easy to take around, man. This thing's so flickable back and forth that you can just kind of like throw it in, and you can definitely ride sporty on the Scout, even with this Bobber that has the reduced suspension. So we find ourselves cruising middle RPM, a little bit of light throttle, not a lot of cruising, just like you normally do when you go from point A to point B. And this engine feels like, oh man, the mid-range on this bike is awesome though. Right there, 4,000, 5,000 RPMs. It carries so nicely. Like, it's still accelerating right there. And that was light throttle, maybe 20% throttle, not revving it all the way to redline. I maybe hit 5,000 RPM, and this thing revs almost to 9. So buttery smooth in the middle. It definitely gives you a great sense of acceleration. Again, it's not torque acceleration, it's horsepower acceleration, but it just goes.
It definitely feels effortless. It feels light in the revs. It feels light in the power delivery. It feels easy going as you give it throttle. Let's pass this guy. What? Definitely has mid-range. Yeah. No issues in the middle. No issues passing traffic. No issues getting around on the Scout. So as far as technology is concerned, there are a lot more tech options on the Scout, which is why I would prefer to explain that like this.
Tech. I think that's what I was talking about. Maybe. Only editing me knows. Just kidding. I know exactly what I was talking about. Tech. This is a limited. There is a base model that is non-limited. There is a limited, and then there's a limited plus tech. The particular bike that I was riding today is this. It is a limited. The difference between the standard and the limited is as follows. With the limited, like this bike right here, you get cruise control. See that right there? It says sport. The limited gets sport mode. It also gets standard and touring mode, which the standard does not. On the new 2025 models, this may be the same screen, but you have a fuel gauge built in. It also shows the RPMs. You can cycle through some of the options here. You have keyed ignition or the push button for the plus tech model. Start, stop, cycle through the menu, cruise control, turn signals, horn, cycle through the high beams. That is for the limited package. The base doesn't get the ride modes. It doesn't get cruise control. Bare bones, 100% bare bones. Also, the power delivery is a little different on the standard. So the limited actually gets the ride modes and the power delivery is sport. Whereas the standard actually gets the power delivery of the limited in standard mode. So you get a little bit dumbed down or dampened throttle response on the base model versus the limited. Now, plus tech. For the plus tech package, which the bike that I was riding was not, you get an extra little bit of buttons right here to work around the menu, little back button. All the other controls on this side are the same, but essentially it is the 4-inch touchscreen. You can swipe through right there. This is my bare hand, but it is also glove compatible. Get full GPS map, all of that built in with the plus tech package. And it happens to be true for all the Scouts, not just this bobber. So you have the standard, the limited, and the limited plus tech with the different screen, couple different options, except for the 101, which is spec'd all the way at the top with everything on it.
Let's see how this thing accelerates. Second gear. Whoop! Oh my God, holy crap, bro. Oh my goodness. This bike is too fast. Oh, dude. All right, power delivery. Now that my camera got moved again. Oh, this is not gonna turn out great for that second footage, but it is what it is. I'm gonna use it anyways. All right, so the power delivery on this bike. This thing kicks it into gear at like 5,000 RPM. When you accelerate through the power band, 2,000, 3,000, you kind of start going, it starts getting a little bit, it feels light, it feels nimble at that 2,000 to 4,000 RPM range. It's easy, it's effortless on the acceleration. But when you hit 5,000 RPMs, it gives you a push, a shove of extra power, extra torque. That's when it gets into the power band. And this thing carries up to almost 9,000 RPM. That is a very strong and healthy power band for a 1250cc V-twin. This is a twin, a liquid-cooled twin, and it pulls like that? Bro, what? That is ridiculous. That really is. This thing pulls strong. Like, there are sport bikes that don't have this much power. You know, MT-07, RS660, there's a bunch of little sporty naked bikes that are not this fast. This thing carries nicely, man. I don't know how else to put it. Literally, when you get to that 4,000 or 5,000, you feel the bike start to squat, get in there, start using the grip of the rear tire. It's beautiful.
As far as brakes, as you can see, there's nothing on this side. So we have a single rotor with a single dual piston caliper. Honestly, the feel is decent. It's a little bit spongy at the front, but it grabs firm. For as fast as this bike is, the brakes are more than adequate. Obviously, the 101 comes with the dual monoblocks. It's a lot better braking, but this is actually more than enough for that size of the bike. I don't think that it really needs the bigger upgrade unless you just want to have better brakes. And as you can see, the bobber has no windscreen. Here's what it feels like when you're out riding.
65 miles an hour, 6th gear. We are cruising, man. I will say, I wish it did have a little bit more wind protection, but that's because I am a sucker for wind protection, man. I would definitely pick wind protection over no wind protection 9 times out of 9. So the fact that this doesn't have a windscreen kind of takes away from it for me. But again, some people don't really care. It's just a personal preference, and I personally prefer to have wind protection. But it's not bad. Clean gust of air. It's not turbulent. Obviously, there's like a truck in front of me, so it's not like crazy stable gust of air. But I'm not moving around. It's not bouncing my head around. Sometimes a short, uncomfortable windscreen is worse because it causes turbulence, comparatively speaking, to no windscreen. So this right here, cruising, easy, effortless. This one's a limited. It has cruise control. You hit the button, you hit down. Boom, look, I let go, and we're still going 65 miles an hour. So we're cruising here. I can sit here, do this, battle the wind a little bit, and I got it. But right here, cruise control, I'm getting pushed to the side. So it's easy to handle back and forth. I mean, you can rest your hand, take a little break, just use your left hand for a little while, get it done, push the button back in, cruise control's disengaged. So it definitely 100% has cruise control, and it was.
As always, super huge shout out to Whole Shot Power Sports for allowing me to come out here and review these bikes. If you guys have any questions and want to check out any of these bikes for yourself, feel free to cross by your local Indian dealership. They do free test rides. You can sit your butt on the seat, go out and ride and see what it feels like. No questions asked. But you have to have your motorcycle license and pants and random stuff like that. But if you're local to Jacksonville and Whole Shot Power Sports is your local Indian dealership, check out this guy right here, Big Dave. Any sort of sales questions, he'll be able to hit you up. Here's his contact information right there.
All right, power. 2nd gear, 40. We got to give these cars ahead of me some space because I know for a fact we're going to catch up. So we're going to have to do this a little differently. 2nd gear, 40 miles an hour. Let's see if we can catch up to that Jetta. Whoop! Of course we can. That's 3rd. Oh my God, bro, this bike is fast. Ow! Dude, this Speed Plus motor, I can't say it enough times. This motor is a little freaking beast. Good torque down low, great power up top. 5,000 RPMs to almost 9,000 RPMs, and this thing flies. Absolutely flies. For a small cruiser, this is probably one of the fastest small cruisers on the market, hands down. I don't care what you gotta say. If you want a fast small cruiser, a little bar hopper to get it, that'll actually give you some nice little whenever you twist the throttle, this is it. Final thoughts. Scout Bobber. Nice, easy to handle, small cruiser. Ergonomically friendly. It's easy reach on the bars. The inputs have a nice sturdy feel to them. It does not feel cheap. It does not feel plasticky. Everything has a good weight, good inputs that you feel as you go through. The bike is light. And easy to handle. It rolls back and forth nice and easily. Slightly slower than the other models because of the fat tire, but it is still an easy flickable bike that cruises very nicely with good mid-range power, good top-end power. I think this is a great all-around motorcycle. It is very easily approachable to a broad spectrum of riders. I like the Scout, man. The Scout is a fun bike.
As always, thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it. If you guys want to check out the Scout 101, this guy right here, the previous generation Rogue right there, and also if you're curious to see how the Super Chief stacks up to the Super Scout, check out this video right here.